Hovering hulls in Tanki Online were supposed to be futuristic and fun, but instead they became one of the most hated updates in the game history. Today, I'm going to break down exactly why they became so hated, and probably do my best to answer that question. So the first reason was because it broke the game's core design. Now, we all know Tanki Online for having multiple tracked hulls in the game, and when hovering hulls were introduced, a lot of players did say that this was just the easy way out of going to places, well, whether it be killing enemies or doing any sort of parkour tricks. Now, a lot of players did not enjoy this update, but the players that did enjoy it were the mobile Android players. For them, having hovering hulls made it a lot easier to play the game and to actually not act like an NPC. Now, moving on to the second reason why I believe it was a bad design choice was because the unfair advantage that most hovering hulls had over regular tracked hulls. For example, Hopper basically flew across the entire map, making CTF mining, for example, completely baseless. Why even bother defending your flag if you can have a Hopper that just jumps into your base and pretends like there's nobody defending it? Modes like CTF and RGB, and including Assault, became a common joke because you could just fly over the entire map and cap a ball or capture the enemy's flag. And it sure as hell became a nuisance within the community. To majority of these players, hovering users weren't exactly any sort of skilled player. They were just choosing the easy way around everything, and having to jump over the entire map and then trash talk over that kind of didn't put hovering hulls in a really good spot. Now, moving on to the third reason I believe it was a bad update was because weapons were designed for tracked and not hover physics. Turrets like Freeze and Firebird became really hard to manage, especially if the enemy had Hammer or Rico, something that has a lot of knockback. There were also a lot of visual bugs in the game where Thunder and Railgun would act really weirdly around hovering hulls, where sometimes your splash damage wouldn't count and sometimes it would. Sometimes you'd clearly bypass through an enemy and the game would say no you. Which actually brings me to my fourth point, which was the buggy physics and lag issues that the hovering hulls had. Now, hovering hulls generally glitched around the map, sliding and clipping into walls or sometimes even bouncing on flat surfaces. If enemies had more than 3 pal cringes, you were basically cooked because pairing 3 of their overdrives together basically made them completely immune to damage. And last but not least, it killed Tanki Online's main identity and its legacy. Tanki Online was built for tracked hulls. Sure, hovering hulls did look a little futuristic and out of place, but it kind of clashed with the original arcade feeling that Tanki Online had. Many old players saw this as a proof of Tanki Online losing its main charm. Though I must agree with one thing, with Android players it became a huge help for most mobile players to get around the map without acting like an NPC and constantly getting themselves killed and throwing the match as a whole. But some people argue that the main problem wasn't hovering hulls in general, but was their overdrives. Now, at release, Palacringe's overdrive did jammer and AP and was completely immune to fire from what I remember, but it became a real nuisance in the game and became one of the most hated hulls in Tanki Online. If you were using Palacringe, most likely you were a virgin. So in conclusion, was the addition of hovering hulls bad for the game? Well, technically it was not, because they were innovating with new hulls and testing out new ideas, but at the same time the ways they implemented those changes weren't exactly the best. If you beg to differ, you're more than welcome to mention that in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys all in another one. Peace.